India, how to take an insult and turn it into a national movement. We examine the panicky reaction in New Delhi over the emergence of a new political force that is growing at an unprecedented rate. Birthed online and spread across social media. Immigrants in South Africa, the intimidation they are up against.
Do you have papers to be here in South Africa?
And the story of Washington's ongoing pressure campaign on Cuba, told from the inside, the belly of the beast. There is a reason why public figures choose their words carefully, because when they speak, they don't just represent themselves, they represent the system. That is something that India's Chief Justice, Surya Kant, should have considered before he described young, unemployed Indians as cockroaches. Kant quickly tried to backtrack and clarify his remarks, but it was too late. And an Indian university student living abroad saw an opportunity. He quickly co-opted that slur and formed an online movement, the Cockroach Janta Party, the CJP, not to be confused with India's ruling party, the BJP, but to satirize it. What followed was something that could only happen, and perhaps only in India, on the internet. The CJP blew up online, racking up tens of millions of followers in just a few days, tapping into a growing angst among Gen Z Indians over mismanaged education systems, unemployment, and the shrinking space for free expression. What started out as satire is turning into something much more than that, an online phenomenon that from chat rooms to the corridors of power has Indians young and old asking the same question. What happens next? What's in a name? In this case, a lot. When an Indian Supreme Court judge made a comment comparing unemployed young people to cockroaches, all kinds of voices online went after him. Abhijit Dipke took a different approach.
How are you, cockroaches?
An Indian who recently graduated from a university in the US and a one-time social media manager for a political party back home, he took that label and turned it into something much bigger. A satirical movement called the Cockroach Janta Party.
To say that, guess what? We are cockroaches. And we are cockroaches because the system stinks. And we are the response to that.
Young people feel like they aren't being heard. So this Cockroach Janta Party bursting onto the scene and everyone getting excited about it. They feel, okay, finally a platform that will talk about us, that speaks to us.
Follow or share kar dena, reporting cockroach.
Cockroaches, they breed in dirty places and they're not pleasant.
Ab karegi cockroach party kaam!
But these are cockroaches that are going to come together in numbers that you've not seen before.
The name, the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP, is a play on the party that has ruled India for 12 years now, Narendra Modi's BJP. The BJP is considered adept at using social media, but its Instagram following of about 9 million people was immediately swamped by the CJP's, which now exceeds 22 million. Numbers that are a testament to the power of satire. The effect it can have on serious subjects like politics and social issues. Because it all started with Dipke and the CJP weaponizing an insect, harnessing AI technology, and showing an understanding of the challenges young Indians face. The end product, political messaging that targets an entrenched system, calls out corruption, a lack of accountability, and spotlights dwindling economic prospects, while taking aim at the BJP and other established parties. It is the kind of messaging that resonates with a demographic many politicians and mainstream news organizations struggle to reach: Gen Z.
Even though the Cockroach Party started as a joke, as a satirical meme, it quickly started talking about issues of social significance and political significance. And the generation that was responding to it was Gen Z. And this is a generation that we have often thought of as an apolitical generation, right? Too busy with its phones. But they have proven us wrong.
In those first few days, we couldn't believe what we were seeing because every morning you would wake up and you see that the follower count of the Cockroach Janta Party has gone up by several million. It is unprecedented to see this kind of growth for any social media platform like this.
He started it off as a satirical thing. But then
It got really overwhelming for him also, right? He said that, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you imagine the pressure you are under when like tens and thousands of people are DMing you their problems and telling them that, oh, you are our only hope, please raise these issues for us.
One Indian institution featured in the CJP's rapidly written manifesto, the mainstream news media, primarily the hundreds of news channels uniformly backing the BJP government. The CJP has two media barons in particular, Gautam Adani and Mukesh Ambani, in its crosshairs, demanding that the media houses they own have their licenses revoked. Adani and Ambani typify media barons in that they own vast, diverse conglomerates, and it is in their interests to stay on good terms with the Modi government. Many of their outlets have tried to delegitimize the CJP.
And it is a rage amongst the so-called Gen Z. That is if viewers, those followers are not bots.
Which is why Abhijit Dipke says he refuses to engage with them. That was how he explained it to Manisha Pande of the alt-media outlet Newslaundry, in one of the few interviews he has granted to an Indian news organization, despite, Dipke says, all kinds of requests.
So how many people are calling you from Republic and Z News?
Non-stop, many people. NDTV, Z News, Republic, everybody is calling. So मेरा point कुछ भी हो वो उसको अगर एंटी इंडिया ही establish कर देंगे, मुझे terrorist ही declare कर देंगे, तो मैं how does it serve the purpose?
So the mainstream media in India for the last 12 years has made it its job to label anyone who questions the government an anti-national. Which is why Dipke can say that, look, I'm not going to go to these mainstream media channels. And he's absolutely right. That's exactly what the channels are doing.
Officials are now examining whether decentralized online campaigns with no formal structure could become vulnerable to foreign influence.
The people there feel like the media or whatever it's called just focuses on things that don't matter, right? They just want drama. They want to put like 8 talking heads that scream at each other for some reason.
It's okay.
And they just fight with each other all the time. There is literally nothing you get out of the legacy media anymore, right?
Adani and Ambani are not the only big business that own media in India. Literally every big business has some or the other interest in media. That's true for many countries all over the world. The control of big media and government over the mainstream media landscape. What is unique in India, a big point of frustration, is that there's a total narrative control among the mainstream media, television news channels. And Adani and Ambani have become the big bad faces of media control.
Suddenly confronted with the CJP's mass Gen Z traction and the prospect of an online mobilization, the Modi government responded. It quickly blocked the CJP's account on X. The authorities said the movement's anti-system satire jeopardized national security and posed a threat to the sovereignty of India. The CJP says it has also had its Instagram and other social media accounts hacked, forcing it to improvise and quickly come up with new handles to subvert the suppression. On the government's reaction, political activists in India called it predictable, a maladroit attempt by the BJP to impede a movement that was barely a week old. We asked the party for comment. It did not respond.
It was not a very clever thing to do, but I guess you're not very clever when you're scared. And the reasoning that the government used was the very same reasoning it always uses, right? Threat to national security. The usual catchphrases. The government constantly equates itself with the nation. So any threat to its political survival is invariably equated with the nation's survival. That's how it changes the narrative.
And this further angered people, made the youth feel that you're trying to take us down. This is exactly what we were fighting against, suppressing our voice, and you've proven our point. And after that takedown, then they made backup accounts and they asked people to follow those backup accounts. If the government was trying to suppress this, it served the opposite purpose because it showed the youth that you were right in not trusting us.
It's so ridiculous when you think about it, right? Like, even the one place where we are able to say things, they are trying to control that space and shrink it as much as they can. And that's why a lot of people are creating pages with like Termite Party of India, using this sort of anonymity to express themselves. They use AI and then they post it.
Where does the Cockroach Janta Party go from here? Can it transition from an overnight viral sensation into a legitimate political movement or party? Tapping into Gen Z's fury over what ails Indian politics is one thing. But Abhijit Dipke knows that he and the CJP got to where they are by accident. That there's a long road that lies between being an online activist with satirical skills and a political player.
And that's the sense that I got when I spoke to him. He's very aware that this is something big, however it was not planned. And now I think it'll take time for them to shape this. And they should be able to do that without being called anti-nationals or some CIA plot, which has become standard in India.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's call him what he is. He is Deep State Dipke.
These young people have come together, they've expressed that they're unhappy with things and they need time now to figure out what they want to be.
So the weaknesses of the Cockroach Janta Party trend, first, it's a trend, right? And trends don't last, right? The internet moves on. Primarily because everybody's attention span is literally 2 seconds now. There needs to be a proper plan in place, an objective in place, and it can't be the one that they have online right now because it is satire. But I really hope they figure it out.
South Africa is dealing with a wave of xenophobic violence after an anti-immigration group there gave undocumented foreign nationals a deadline to leave the country. It follows weeks of public assaults, intimidation campaigns, and an inflammatory mobilization online. Nick Muirhead has been following this story.
The group March and March is stoking violence against foreigners by scapegoating them for the country's problems. The movement is led by a former radio personality-turned-agitator, Jacinta Ngobese-Zuma, who has given the government a 1-month ultimatum to act.
We know that we are the voice of the voiceless, the unemployed, the drug addicts, the women who are raped and trafficked every day from this country by foreign nationals, and we now say enough is enough.
The narrative that migrants are responsible for high crime, unemployment and poor service delivery has gained traction among many frustrated South Africans. While crime in the country is a serious issue, the claim that foreign nationals are disproportionately to blame is not supported by evidence. Still, that narrative is being amplified by an aggressive social media campaign fueled by anger and misinformation. Several South African news outlets are now being criticized for giving these groups excessive airtime and inflaming tensions.
You came as a refugee. So what are you doing now for living in South Africa?
Sorry?
What are you doing now for living here in South Africa?
I'm employing the South Africa.
What are you doing?
Meanwhile, Ghanaian authorities began repatriating citizens from South Africa on Wednesday. Many migrants say they are being targeted by armed vigilante groups, dragged out of their homes and workplaces, assaulted, beaten, and interrogated.
They kicked me into the rain.
South Africa has been here before. In 2008, at least 62 people were killed in xenophobic attacks. 12 more died in 2019. And now, with the June 30 deadline looming, many watching the familiar scenes of violence unfolding question, just how bad will it get?
Thanks, Nick. Cuba is in a near total blackout. For months now, Cubans have endured electrical outages of up to 22 hours a day. Shortages of food and medicine have made things worse. The causes are both recent and decades in the making. The Trump administration has declared Cuba a national security threat and choked off oil supplies to the island. That followed decades of severe U.S. sanctions and economic mismanagement within Cuba itself. Across much of the U.S. mainstream media, the narrative is of a communist state collapsing under its own weight. Some commentators even argue that Cuba now needs rescuing by Washington. Most outlets telling that story do it from the outside. Belly of the Beast is different. It reports from inside Cuba, telling the country's story through the voices of ordinary citizens. But doing that journalism is difficult. The material that we filmed for this report took 5 days to upload. We spoke to Liz Oliva Fernandez from Belly of the Beast about what it means to report on an economic war from inside the country it is being waged against.
Right now we have breaking news. President Trump declaring a national emergency over threats by Cuba.
The president claimed the policies and practices of the Cuban government are an extraordinary threat to U.S. security.
Most of the media outlets who cover Cuba, who report on Cuba, they do it from the outside.
We've traveled to Havana, where many go without power.
They do maybe spend a week in Cuba and they go back thinking that they really understand what is going on here. You're in the ground, working inside of Cuba, telling the story of the Cubans and trying to visualize the stories that you can find anywhere else.
Eli Malik Reyes is the only trans athlete to be officially recognized for the Cuban Sports League. The path wasn't easy.
Belly of the Beast is a name that provoked different kind of reactions in people. For some people, the beast is the US government. Some people, the beast is Cuban government. For some people, the beast is the sanctions. Some people, the beast is capitalism. For us, to name it in that way is just try to visualize that we are working from inside. One of the goals of the sanctions is trying to defund the government, trying to defund the public sector. At the same time, they are putting money in the private sector here in Cuba. The problem is that the private sector don't pay for the trash collection, don't pay for education, don't pay for health care. Belly of the Beast, like other media outlets that are also working inside of Cuba, they need to prepare to be able to work in the middle of these blackouts. The critical thing right now in Cuba is to have access to electricity. And the way to have access to electricity is just this battery storage that they sell. And if you have enough money in Cuba, you can buy them in a private store. In some way, that's also create a bubble because at work we have electricity, but then we come back home and the reality hit us. You are living under dark conditions. You are also reporting that conditions. It is kind of a cycle that never ends. We are here on the streets of Havana to ask Cubans how they feel after Trump's latest announcement.
Porque lo que no pueden perdonarnos los imperialistas es que estemos aquí y que hayamos hecho una revolución socialista en las propias narices de los Estados Unidos.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out.
Suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men.
Everybody knows that Marco Rubio's parents are from Cuba, but for me it's really difficult to connect to someone who actually are doing the best he can in order to make the people in Cuba suffer. Because everybody knows that sanctions only affecting the people in Cuba, the ordinary Cubans. So how you can do that and at the same time saying that you love the country, that you love the people inside of the country?
La verdadera razón por la que no tienen electricidad, combustible ni alimentos es porque quienes controlan su país han saqueado miles de millones de dólares, pero nada ha sido utilizado para ayudar al pueblo.
I think that he was trying to send a message to the Cubans who live in Cuba. And that's why he did it in Spanish. He go out of the streets and did interviews. The most of the people that we interviewed, they haven't seen the video.
¿Usted ha visto el video, el mensaje que subió el secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos, Marco Rubio?
No, realmente no.
Es que Marco Rubio lo desprecio tanto que
que no vale la pena ni oír nada de lo que dice.
Ahora, ¿usted cree que le pueda mostrar el video un momentico y usted me dice qué le parece?
La razón por la que se ven obligados a sobrevivir 22 horas al día sin electricidad no se debe a un bloqueo petrolero por parte de Estados Unidos.
Si Marcos Rubio él no tiene ni sentido de lo que es patria.
Most of the times, Cubans are just trying to going through the day. They don't have time to spend on social media. Also, they probably don't have enough charge in the phones because the blackouts can last forever. So they are not really paying attention when US politicians are talking to Cubans.
There's no oil blockade on Cuba per se. Here's what's happening with Cuba, okay? Cuba used to get free oil from Venezuela. So the only blockade that's happened is the Venezuelans have decided we're not giving you free oil anymore.
Marco Rubio is saying that it's not such a thing like an oil blockade in Cuba in a room full of journalists, and no one is saying like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? No one is doing a following question to that. If no one is doing that job, we think that it's our responsibility to do that job. And so far, we have been exhausted because so many lies, so many misinformation has been spread that, for example, everyone is repeating that Cuba is a threat to the United States national security.
Communist Cuba, which has been a deadly threat.
But this is also about America's national security. We know, right, that they have allowed terrorists to operate.
We are giving to people context. We are not just repeating opinions. We are not doing propaganda. Our job is presenting facts. Maybe you disagree with our videos, but you can say that we are lying or we are omitting. I think that there is a huge gap between the people who were alive before 1959 revolution and after. For my grandma, the experience that they have about Cuba and about capitalism is pretty different from the experience that people from my generation are expecting. But I think like the main thing that makes both generations comes together is being hidden crisis after crisis. It's Saturday afternoon, and as you see, the streets are empty. Nothing is happening. Cuba used to be different, but it was also when the first administration of Donald Trump started to screw the sanctions on Cuba. We haven't been able to come back to the joy. We don't have the solutions in our own hands. We can manage that. So people get frustrated. Young people get frustrated. And the cherry on the top of that, it's really difficult to escape a propaganda machine that is coming from everywhere. They have three narratives. The first one is that Cuban government is the guilty one. Whatever is happening in Cuba, if you're suffering, it's because of the Cuban government.
Cuba for 67 years has been a communist dictatorship.
The second one is like Cuba itself is the failed state.
Cuba's in terrible shape for the simple reason that its economy, like all such communist or socialist economies, has failed utterly.
And the third point is like, United States, we are the good guys. We want to save you guys. You're gonna have freedom.
What would a prosperous, successful Cuba mean for the American people?
I envision a free Cuba as kind of like the Israel of this hemisphere.
The best way to keep independent editorial is not accepting money, not from the Cuban government, not from the US government. We just receive donations from individuals through Patreon, and we also do production services. So that's the way that we trying to fund our journalism.
And finally, the genocide in Gaza may have fallen off the news agenda with the war in Iran drawing global attention elsewhere, but it continues despite a supposed ceasefire. This week, as Palestinian families were meeting to celebrate Eid, Israel carried out a series of strikes on residential neighborhoods across the Strip. One airstrike in Gaza City killed 10 people, 5 of them children. A journalist, photographer Fadi al-Maghari, was killed in a separate attack, one that targeted his car. More than 920 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since Israel ostensibly agreed to that ceasefire last October. That is almost as many people as the number of Israelis killed on October 7th, 2023. But the Israeli authorities understand how news coverage works. They know that when death tolls rise incrementally, they do not attract the kind of attention and scrutiny that a mass killing does. So the Israelis are playing the long game. And with every story of Palestinians killed that they fail to cover, news organizations are doing their part in letting the Israeli state get away with murder.